Hello, have you ever had a job to do and found out later that there was a tool that would have made that job so much more easier? In fact, maybe you weren't able to complete the job because you didn't know that tool existed. Hi, my name is Ken Yates, and I'm with Grace Evangelical Society, and I've got good news for you. God has given us as believers a job to do, but He's given us the tool in order for us to do it. I must admit right off the bat that I'm not mechanical at all. I'm not a handyman at all. And through my life, I've been given tasks to do from my wife, my honey-do list, or perhaps even I decided I needed to do something around the house. And I didn't even realize how to do it. And there may have been a tool there that would have helped me do it and allowed me to be successful to do it. And either I didn't know it was there or didn't know how to use it. I'll give you an example. I'll show you how bad of a handyman I am. I remember in my younger days wanting to hang a picture on a wall. Well, how do I find out where the stud in the wall is? Well, what I would do is take a nail and start tapping until I would do it. There would be little holes in the wall all over the place. To show you my level of ignorance, I didn't even know something like a stud finder existed. And the first time that I realized that, I said, wow, that sure would have made my job a lot easier. And in fact, there were times I was hanging pictures that I just gave up because I said I can't find the stud to hang the picture up on. So I just didn't do it. There is a story from the Civil War which kind of indicates this principle. Of course, the Civil War was between the North and the South. And one of the advantages that the South had was they had General Robert E. Lee. And General Robert E. Lee was an outstanding military leader. And in the North, there was a general by the name of George McClellan. And he was not at the level of General Lee. And General McClellan was known as being very cautious. When he had an advantage on the battlefield, he often would not take advantage of that advantage. He wouldn't press the advantage that he had. And there was a famous battle called Antietam. And Antietam was the single bloodiest day in American history as far as casualties go. And I'm not a Civil War expert, but what happened was after this war, a lot of historians believe that McClellan could have won it. But because of the losses that he went through and his men went through, he wasn't bold enough. He wasn't risky enough. And he played it safe. And of course, McClellan's boss was the president, President Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln wrote him a letter or a little note after that. And here's what Abraham Lincoln said. If you don't want to use the army, I should like to borrow it for a while. Now, obviously, that's a very sarcastic remark, and it's a dig at McClellan. But what Lincoln was saying is, I've given you the tool to defeat the South. I've given you the tool to be victorious. And if you're not going to use it, maybe I can use it. Maybe I can get the job done. Now, for those of you who know your history, eventually Lincoln replaced McClellan, and he was replaced eventually by Ulysses S. Grant, who won the war, who used the army in a much more bold way. He had this tool, this army, and he used it in order to bring victory to the North, and the North won the Civil War. I give all those examples because in the New Testament, after we have believed in Jesus Christ, we are commanded by the Lord to walk in a holy way, to become more like Christ, to produce the fruit of the Spirit. That's an important task. That's a big task. And what I've noticed, not just in my life, but in the lives of other people as well, is that sometimes we don't realize the tool that God has given us, because God has given us the tool to complete that task, to be victorious in that task. But we often either don't know that tool is there, or we don't know how to use it. Some people, for example, when they want to become more like Christ and they want to be, for lack of a better word, more holy, more spiritually mature, they'll use tools such as legalism. They'll come up with certain things that they do every day that'll make them holier or more like Christ. They'll have a list of things they can eat or watch or whatever the case may be, and they'll check this list off in order to grow spiritually, and they fail. Paul talks about that in the book of Romans. Other people will seek out religious experiences like speaking in tongues, or maybe they believe that if they listen to Christian music and sing along with it, that will make them holier or more like Christ. Others will think that it's religious rituals. Well, if I'm baptized or if I join this church or whatever the case may be, this is what makes me pleasing to God. Still others will say, well, if I go to seminary or if I follow certain teachers and read their books, read theological books, it'll do it. And of course, there can be some value in those kind of things. But that's not the tool that God has given us to grow spiritually, to produce the fruit of the Spirit. Paul tells us the tool that God has given us in Romans chapter 8, verse 11. Here's what Paul says. But if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit who dwells within you. This is the tool that God has given us to walk in a way that pleases the Lord. He has given us the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead, lives within us, and we as believers can come to the Lord and say, Lord, make me more like you through the power of the Spirit who lives within me. Paul says, if we walk by the Spirit, we will not fulfill the desires of the flesh. God has given us the tool, and once we realize what that tool is, we can do the things that he has told us to do. Don't be like me trying to figure out how to hang a picture on the wall when the tool is right there and God has given us, which is the Spirit who dwells within us. If we read the scriptures and see what the Lord requires and then ask him through his Spirit to make us more like Christ through that power who lives within us, that is the key. That is the tool of victory. If you've liked this video, I'd ask you to push the subscribe button at the bottom of the page and you'll be notified when other videos like this will come out in the future. But above all, focus on Christ.